Hello, welcome to this video recording of my presentation introducing dish optimization in Cloud Pak for Data for people who have some understanding of data science, machine learning, but who don't know much about decision optimization. Let's first introduce myself. My name is Alain Chavrier. I am a senior technical staff member for decision optimization. I work in the IBM France lab in the south of France. I've been working almost 25 years on decision optimization, and I joined IBM through the iLog acquisition. I have been a developer for the engines, for different tools and platforms, part of decision optimization. I've been a development manager and a product manager. Currently, my focus is to work on the integration of decision optimization in the Cloud Pak for Data platform in the Watson Studio and the Watson Studio deploy modules. So what is decision optimization? Because in fact, this presentation will not talk so much about tools, software, product functionality, but I really want to start by explaining what is decision optimization, what it is used for, and how it compares with the other technologies, with other techniques included in what we now refer to as artificial intelligence and data science. I also want to talk about how it combines with these other techniques. So my presentation is designed to give an introduction to all of you who don't know about optimization, but know about machine learning. And so I will use machine learning as a comparison element to highlight what is optimization, how it's different, how it's similar, how it competes, and how they can collaborate. Because indeed, in the current days, in the internet, in the headlines, there is a lot of talking about data science, about machine learning, and about AI. But decision optimization is not covered as much. So with Google Trends, we can have a look at how the different vocabulary has been used for web search during the last decades. And it's very interesting. In fact, I really like to tell a funny anecdote. When I was young, as a teenager at school, we get this typical question about what do you want to be when as a professional later in your life. And I remember I was many times answering I want to be an artificial intelligence engineer. And indeed, this is what I started to work on. I joined iLog as my first job, and I work on the Cplex-based software and all the products around Cplex. And I like to say I was an AI software developer. But some people were saying it was not a good idea because referring to AI was too fuzzy and it was potentially promising too much. AI had an image of doing magic stuff, and operation research was something very specific, doing some type of problem, solving some types of problems, giving some types of answers. So I should have been more pragmatic, and I was asked to use the operation research terminology because this is what decision optimization is about. Decision optimization is a name that IBM has started to use for its portfolio. But as the time progressed, as we see on the slide, different words have been used. We see that artificial intelligence has been used less, and new words have appeared, such as cognitive, which is not shown in this slide, and data science. Machine learning also was used a lot of time ago, and now you see it's probably the word that is used more. So since a few years, we are asking not to use operational research. This is why we say we are doing decision optimization, and sometimes people are really asking about what is the relation between decision optimization and AI. And it's funny to say, well, we are those who have been doing AI probably for most time. It's a funny cycle, and it shows the issues we have between the different acronyms, because many people use all those acronyms, AI, data science, ML, OR, without really understanding the difference between all. What I want to do in this first part is to focus on machine learning and decision optimization. I want to really show what each one is referring to, how they compare, in what they are similar and in what they are different. So if we want to understand something, we go to Wikipedia and we search for these two different terminologies, machine learning and optimization. And we see what is shown here. The definition is the one of Wikipedia, the underlying is from me. And I will focus on the underlying because this is really showing important differences. On the ML side, we see that the definition is that it's about computers learning without being programmed. While in dish optimization, it said that it's using well-defined models. That is an important difference. And Wikipedia is also mentioning some interesting terminology about the process of using these techniques. On the ML side, it refers to training and scoring, while on the DO side, it refers on model development. And it says we use solving instead of scoring as the name to run the techniques after the model has been developed. So what is clear is that those two are two different data science techniques. They both belong to data science, but they are different. And what is also missing here is that these definitions are not explicitly saying what each technique can be used for. But it's clear there are two data science techniques and they can be both used as part of analytics, business analytics. So to start, instead of using the Wikipedia definition, I would prefer to restart from the different classification of the areas as part of analytics. And when I think about describing the analytics area, in general, I start by everyday life example, analytics for humans. And so I can show you three different things that probably all of you can see in your cars. The first one is this speedometer. The speedometer is here to show you what is the current speed of your car. It's clearly corresponding to what we call descriptive analytics. The second thing you see probably in your car is some information about how much distance you can go with the current amount of fuel you have in your tank and based on your current way of driving. This is exactly corresponding to the predictive analytics area. The third one is something that probably you also almost have in your car now, is a way to recommend the path to go from your current location to a destination that you have been selecting. This is a very good example of what is prescriptive analytics. So you see, with this everyday life example, we don't talk about what are the techniques which are used to develop these three tools in your car, but we can clearly identify the objectives, the intention of those three tools. This is I would say a human example, everyday life. So let's now go quickly over a more business example of these three analytics area based on a customer I worked with quite some time ago, which is Canal de Isabel II. It is a company in charge of water distribution in the Madrid area in Spain. They have the exact same needs that we had in the previous. They need a tool, they need a set of tools, they need a lot of software, a lot of environments to be able to understand what is the current situation, what is the current weather, where is it raining, where it's not raining. It's descriptive analytics. Part of it is to develop software that can show to the user what is the current situation. Then they need a set of predictive analytics tools to understand, to know, to discover what may happen tomorrow, what may happen in the future. And then they need a set of prescriptive analytic tools to recommend them, to prescribe what they should do based on the current situation and what is predicted to happen. So you see that here the three areas is not defining what are the technologies that is used. I'm not saying here for each of the three areas, is it machine learning, is it optimization, is it something else? I'm just defining what we want to achieve. Describe, predict, or prescribe. So this conclusion is summarized in this slide. The difference between predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics, the two areas I will focus on now. I will not talk so much about descriptive. It's not related on the technology. It's related to the intention. You probably have more background on predictive analytics and know different techniques which can be used, such as machine learning. If you have followed classes about machine learning, you might even have been told that machine learning is used for prescriptive analytics. It's true, in some cases it can be used, in some limited cases I would say, but maybe it's more a personal opinion. So hence the next question is, in general, what techniques can be used for prescriptive analytics? What are the data science techniques which can help me take good decisions? So here I will show another important examples based on a human being, an everyday life situation. So here is a slide I used a lot to give an idea on the different data science techniques that can help take decisions. Again, I use these examples of human beings to help describe the alternatives, the different ways to take decisions. And we will see the ways humans take decisions, different ways they may take decisions, correspond to different types of software to take decisions. I had this idea when my family was planning a trip to Costa Rica. We had to take a plane for a trip in a sunny place where we would stay 2 weeks. But not only having time on the beach, but also visiting the rainforest. So it was not obvious how to pack the luggage, and each one in the family had its own preferred algorithm. My younger kid, Adrian, who had 10 years at the time, was using a technique which is made of following the usual rules as given by his parents over time. For example, for each day put a pair of these, for each week put a t-shirt, or etc. There is a list of rules which his parents has given to him and is just applying. This corresponds, we will see later, to what is business rules management. My second kid, older one, Hugo, he had 13 years at the time. So he had no idea of the rules given by the airlines, the limits that there is a maximum of 20-something kilograms for a luggage, but he could pack without taking into account the rules. Teenagers don't follow the rules, but he had seen and learned from the parents, from his mother, from his father, different older summer trips, and from what he had seen, he was able, kind of magically, to pack a luggage that was more or less corresponding to the airline limits. Obviously, you understand that this will correspond to machine learning. On the last alternative, my wife, she has the limitation from the airline in mind. She also approximately have an idea of the weight and the benefit value of each item she could put in the luggage. And while she's not explicitly doing all the calculations, she's packaging the luggage with the constraints in mind, the limits given by the airline, and the objectives, her preference. We will see this corresponds to decision optimization. So you see there is one objective, package the luggage, take the decision on what to put in the luggage, and there are 3 different ways which correspond to 3 different techniques, 3 different data science, 3 different AI techniques to do this luggage. Business rules management, machine learning, and decision optimization. It's not 100% clear which one is the most accurate, most appropriate in this case, as writing the optimization model for a case like this may be a bit overkill. But definitely, if this is about operating a multi-million supply chain business with a changing and challenging world, personally, I would prefer to base my decision on decision optimization more than any other of these alternatives. Because we need to understand that each of these techniques has benefits and inconveniences, pros and cons. They are quickly summarized here, and let me just say a word on each of those which is listed here. For business rules management, the main benefit can be seen originally as an issue. You need to write the rules, you need to define them, provide them explicitly. But in fact, it's a benefit, and this is in general a reason to use business rules management? Because it allows to have a shared and very precisely known policy inside the company. We really know what we are doing, and we can really say when we take a decision why we have what rule has been applied to take this decision. On the other hand, it's pretty suboptimal. You can get a set of decisions which is very far from what would be overall globally optimal. But if we come back to human beings, it's something that most people do. At school, basically, what we learn is to obey and to follow rules. If we go to machine learning, we have another set of benefits and inconvenience. The main benefit, which is probably why machine learning is everywhere in the news, is that there is no need to formulate. It's when we come back to the Wikipedia definition, it's automatically learning from data. So you don't have to create a model, you don't have to understand the constraints. It's magic. You see your parents doing the luggage, and after 10 years, you know how to do the luggage, and it fits with the airline limit. But in fact, to learn, there are some inconveniences. To learn, you need data. You need a lot of data. If you don't have this data, you cannot learn. My kid had to learn year after year, and when the world will change, it may be an issue. And this is what is known as bias. The bias is that what you learn is coming from the data. So as my kid has learned how to take luggage to go to the summer place for 1 week of holiday in the summer, he will be in trouble when he will pack for the first time to go to ski with his friends, because he will probably use an algorithm that has been trained with summer holidays data. This is what is called this bias. In machine learning, sometimes if you did not use the right data to train, the resulting model is not adequate for the new situation. And when the world is changing a lot, think about COVID, you have a completely new situation. You may have absolutely no data to train machine learning algorithms on. The last issue here is about no explanation. Well, again, maybe it's more personal opinion. There is lots of theory and lots of features starting to appear about explaining machine learning model. In my opinion, it's not completely satisfactory. It's not really a real explanation in what a scientific person may understand. So the last one, optimization, again, not just benefits, there is also inconvenience, and this is why it's not so simple to choose between those three techniques. The main benefits are about optimality and explanation. Really, when your model is defined with the constraint and the objective, you know that the solution will be returned if you have enough time to solve it. It will correspond to really the optimal solution, or at least the engine will give you what is the gap between this solution and the real optimal one. And if it's a 0.01%, you can in practice consider it as optimal. Another important benefit is that you can get some kind of explanations. It's not an explanation of why you do that, but you can really easily have an explanation of why I would not do something else, giving you some constraints that would not be fulfilled if you would do something different, or telling you that if you would do something different, you would have a much worse objective. So if you want something optimal with respect to your objective, this is not what you should do. So optimality and explanation is really something you can do with optimization. And so then we come to the main issue with optimization is that, and again, we come back to the Wikipedia definition. This is based on a well-defined model. You need to create a model. You need to formulate in some way what are the constraints and the objective and the decisions you want to work on. And so you need some people, some person that is able to transform the business problem into a formulation that the optimization engine can understand. We will come back on this, showing examples, and so what we will do later is compare those, exactly focusing on machine learning optimization. We will not talk so much about business rules. We will see how they compare when you create the model and when you use the model after. But what is really important in this slide is that, to summarize, we have different techniques for exactly the same intention. It's prescriptive analytics in all three cases here. It's prescriptive analytics as part of AI, but it can be business rules management, machine learning, or decision optimization. So if we summarize what we've just seen from the slide we had before, predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics from the intention perspective. And we now look at what are the different techniques which correspond to those two intentions. We see that, and this is what will be the confusion will appear, is that machine learning can be used for predictive, is in general used for most of the predictive, but it can also be used for prescriptive. So this is where the misunderstanding may appear. On the other hand, Desch optimization, what we call here mathematical optimization and constraint programming, this is the two lines in bold here are two slightly different techniques, well, in fact very different techniques, but at this level of detail, slightly different techniques that are part of operational research, which support prescriptive analytics and correspond to Desch optimization. And they just support prescriptive analytics. We don't use mathematical optimization to do prediction, at least not directly. And so you see that there are, it's also another important difference, is that some techniques are data-driven, and it leads to the issue we have mentioned before. Machine learning is data-driven. You need data. If you don't have any data, you do nothing. But you don't need knowledge. You don't need the formulation of the model. Most of the other techniques are knowledge-driven models, and rules and optimization both require some knowledge. You need to formulate what you want to do, or at least what you want to achieve. It's a difference between rules and optimization. So that's conclude the introduction of where is machine learning and where is optimization with respect to predictive and prescriptive. Let's now really focus on those two and see how what are the main differences when we look in more details at the process when you are using machine learning on one side and optimization on the other side. So let's start with machine learning. As said at the beginning, this presentation is mostly targeted for people who already know somehow machine learning, to really highlight how Desch optimization is different in the way it works and in the objectives it targets. So this is probably something you already understand. It's a description on how you work with machine learning when you train the model on the left part and when you use the trained model to score on the right part. There are four things I really want to highlight here. First, they have probably been mentioned a bit before, and as I said, it's probably something you perfectly know. First, you need historical data. So here I'm just showing 4 lines of data, but in practice, you need a huge amount of data, and the more data, probably the better your training is. Second, you see this big compute box on the training side, on the left side. You need a lot of computation to train your model. On the other hand, you see on the right, the compute box is small. When you have the trained model, to score it once, it's a very small amount of computation that is required. 3, the result of the development is a trained model. It's not a formulation. It's not something that is in general human readable. It's just the outcome of lots of computation on your historical data. And 4, at production time on the right, you just send one row, one record with a set of features. You don't have the targets as input, but a very small computation time with the trained model allows you to obtain the value of the targets. So let's now look at how the same process for development and use of the model is with optimization. So similar slide. On the left, the development process, creating the model, and on the right part, the production moment using the model. And here again, I will highlight 4 things which more or less will correspond to the 4 things I highlighted before. First, the input is quite different. It's not historical data. You don't need historical data. You don't need to have a lot of set of data of different, many times it appears the same process has been occurring in the past. You need at least one, which is representative of typical input data for your decision process. But in general, also, it's very important to mention that this data is more complex. It's not a record is not one line, but an input data set is made of several tables. Why? Because, for example, you will want to schedule processes, say what resource is running what activity, at what moment, using what tools, during which state. So you will need lots of input table to define the different possible resources, the activities you need to execute, the skills which are required for the activity, and so on. So the structure of the data for optimization is in general much more complex. The second element is that you see here we have some need for human beings during the development. There is no automatic training process. This is what makes it less magic, maybe. Maybe this is also why it's currently less used. You don't put a lot of data in something and you shake it and you get a trained model. You need some human beings to participate to the creation of the model. In general, it's a pair of persons, but it can be the same person sometimes, because you need some person with a business understanding of the problem. What are the constraints? What is the limit for the airline? What are the different items you can put in the luggage? What are the different benefits of putting this item or the others? And you need some person with some operation research skills, some data optimization skills to be able to transform this description of the business into a model that the optimization engine will be able to understand. It can be the same person, that an optimization person, an operation research expert may explain the problem and then can do it on its own, but it's always better to compare it, to validate this with a business analyst before the model resulting from the development is used in production. So to complete this development process, we see we have a small compute box. There is not so much computation required during development time. And at the end, we get a program model. It's not a trained model. In general, the model will be readable. It will be a description of what are the constraints, what are the decisions, and what are the objectives. And last point, this is about computation, which I mentioned before. In the case of optimization, you don't need so much computation during development, because in general, you work with smaller data set at development time, but at production time, you may want to solve bigger problems. And so you will need a lot of computation to solve this model which have been programmed during the development. So if we summarize the main differences between machine learning optimization as techniques, in the way we use them, we get some table like this. So it's a simple summary, it does not try to be comprehensive. So we see on the first line something Bob already mentioned. Machine learning is data-driven, while optimization is knowledge-driven. To train a machine learning model, you will need a lot of data. And to create an optimization model, you need an understanding of the problem you want to solve. So you understand that if you don't have data, that will be difficult to use machine learning. And if you have no description of the decision to take, constraints, and objective, it will be very hard to create an optimization model. This is what is explained in the second line. So when you don't have data, I mentioned before the COVID situation, where the situation is changing a lot, the rules of a business is changing a lot. In general, you don't have historical data, it will be pretty harder to use machine learning. On the other hand, with data optimization, when the world changes a lot, if you know how it changed, what are the new constraints, you cannot do this anymore, you must do that now, then it's sometimes pretty easy to change with a very small change an existing model to be directly usable with a new situation. The third line is about the way the model is created. So in machine learning, it's learn alone. So we know this is how machine learning is presented, but everyone who has worked with machine learning knows that it's not completely true. There is a lot of work on which data you want to use, how you want to prepare the data, what are the features you want to use, some feature engineering to be done, etc., etc., etc. And so there is a person, a data scientist, working, and it's not something like you just put the data unstructured and it's learning alone. At least it's not the case at this point. So it requires some human, but definitely not as much as programming a model. On the optimization side, it's true, we need to program a model. And on the next slide, I will show you a very simple example to really understand what we mean by creating a model. Next line is about computation. We talked about that before. With machine learning, you need a lot of computation at learning time. Then for each scoring, it's pretty easy to do. Very few computation for each scoring. With optimization, it's almost the contrary. You need a lot of computation during production time. After you have created the model, you have deployed it, it's integrated into an application. When you will run it for a real instance, plan my production for next year, it will use a lot of computation. Optimization model can take minutes or even hours to solve. Next line is about those benefits and inconvenients I mentioned a few slides before. With machine learning, what we do is we repeat what we have learned. So it's good and it's bad at the same time. So it's good because if we have good data to train, it will just do what it has done before. Maybe sometimes without really understanding why we have done that and what are the constraints and the objectives. It will repeat what has been learned. If the data is wrong, it's what we call a bias. Sometimes it's not good to repeat what we have done in the past. On the other hand, with optimization, the solution is really optimal with respect to the objectives we have formulated. So if we say maximize production or minimize cost, it will maximize production and minimize cost as part of any possible combination of decisions which is compatible with all the constraints which have been also included in the model. And finally, last row is about explainability. In my opinion, all work on explainability of machine learning model is not so convincing to me. What we provide is we can extract what part of the data is responsible for the outcome. To me, it's not really an explanation. It's not a why. It's what has been the reason for this decision, but not why this. On the other hand, with optimization, well, it's still not directly possible to say because there is indeed a very complex mathematical a set of very complex mathematical algorithms involved. It's not easy to say why this optimal solution, but if we want to understand this optimal solution, it's pretty easy to say why if I would have changed this decision, and the algorithm would say, well, if you change the decision, that is not feasible because of this set of constraints, or it's feasible, but it's the objective is worse. And so as you ask me for optimal solution, this is why I did not propose this solution. So in my opinion, explainability is pretty better with decision optimization. So we have compared the life cycle of ML and DO. I summarized here what I think are the important differences. A few things I want to do to complete is give you an idea of what are those models that we create and what types of problems we can solve, both from a technical perspective and from a business perspective. So I will use a very simple and didactical example, which has been used a lot by Alex Fleischer, both a colleague and a friend, to introduce optimization. In that case, the decision maker is a school manager, and the decision to take is how many buses of two different types should be rented in order to transport all kids from the school to the zoo. So in this slide, you see a description with words on the left, and you see two different versions of the model formulation. They are completely equivalent. The one in the middle is created with OPL, Optimization Programming Language, which is a proprietary language specific for optimization from IBM. And on the right, you see an equivalent model created in Python with a DoCPlex package. These examples here will look pretty simple. In fact, the objective is very simple. There are two decisions to take. How many buses of size 40 and how many buses of size 30. So it's very simple. There is one constraint, one objective. So it's just to illustrate. So just for information, if you are not familiar with optimization, in practice, realistic problems for our customers have millions of variables and probably hundreds of thousands of constraints or even millions of constraints. So you understand, I use a much simple example to introduce. So there are four parts which are important. There is input data. As I said, you need some kind of small input data to create the model and then to run it in production. You need what are the decision variables. You need to formulate in your model what is the objective you want to maximize and minimize, and you want to say what are the constraints with their limits. So you see on the OPL column here that those four parts are clearly identified. You have the data, again, pretty simple. Everything will be pretty simple in the example. So the data is I want to move 300 kids, and there are two types of bus, the bus of size 40 and 30, which have a different costs of 500 and 400. This is a simple definition of the data. In practice, as said before, you will have several tables explaining all the different types of buses that you can use with different characteristics, the different types of kids who may have specific needs for transportation, etc., etc. Here, a very simplistic example, so it fits with a few numbers. Another aspect I want to mention here is that the next step is we need to define what are the decision variables. Again, it will look pretty simple here. We have two decision variables. One is what is the number of buses of size 40 and what is the number of buses of size 30. In practice, as I said before, we will have application where it's much more complex. You see on the right, for each of the elements I'm describing, the equivalent in Python here. These two very simple lines in OPL, because it's a dedicated language, are a bit more complex because they are using a model which has been created and an API integer var to define each of these variables. The third part is to define the objectives. So here the objective is an economical objective. Again, real life you will have different objectives competing one with the other, so it will be more complex. But here the objective is just a weighted sum of the cost for each bus and the number of each bus. So it's very simple to express. The last point is that I want to transport all the kids. So taking into account the size of each bus and the number of each type of bus, I want all this to be greater than the number of kids I have to transport. So there are pretty simple examples, and in this case you see that we have pretty simple formulation of the business quantities, the business concepts into mathematical formula which are pretty simple and which are linear. So it fits pretty well to what we can do with our engines, but it's not always the case, and part of the work of this optimization expert, or expert, operation research expert, is to transform, sometimes it's much more complex, a business constraint or a business objective into a formulation that the engine can understand. And it's not always the case, it's not always easy, and here it's pretty easy because this objective and this constraint are linear. It's a linear expression of these decision variables. So in my next slide, I will show you what are these more complex type of model, which are the ones that with our technology we can solve and which are the ones we cannot solve. So indeed, this slide represents all types of problem we could consider. The example from the previous slide, very simple example, is a case where we have integer variables, how many buses, linear inequalities, and the objective is a linear function. So it's a MIP problem, second line of this table. The first line is when it's even simpler, when there is no integer or Boolean variables, every variable is real. So the problem is even easier to solve. You may also, with our engine, solve other level of complexity of problems when some quadratic terms are involved, either in the inequalities, in the constraints, or in the objectives. This is all the white lines on the top of this chart. A completely nonlinear problem is not supported as of today by CPLEX, so it could appear as being an important and significant limitation, but in practice it's not so much. Most of the problem in real life, even if they have constraints that an objective which do not appear to be linear, through some process, and this is the work of the optimization expert, can be transformed into something that is that fits into one of the categories that is covered. A few problems cannot be transformed, cannot be linearized, and indeed in some very limited cases CPLEX will not be able with a mathematical programming engine to solve those problems. The very last line, constraint programming, is another set of techniques which is included in the CPLEX engine, which allow to solve different problems, and in practice it is very efficient where you have scheduling problems, and variables, constraint, objective are of quite different types. Variables may be activities to schedule in time to decide when to start, when to stop. Their duration can be variable and assigned to a different set of resources. Constraints will be like precedences between the activities or assignments to specific resources with specific skills, and objectives may go from minimizing make span to optimizing the quality of the solution according to skills of the resources. Scheduling is just an example. There are other type of very combinatorial problem, very non-linear, but still with discrete variables, which can be managed by constraint programming. So I did not want to finish this first section about introducing optimization without mentioning the type of application where optimization can be used. Because my example were very simple, so you may think that it's used for tiny academical problems and examples, but in practice optimization is really everywhere, and in fact probably much more than machine learning. Every day you are facing situations which have been planned, optimized, scheduled with optimization. When you take the train, when you take the plane, when you take the metro, probably, most certainly, the schedule of the train, the plan of the drivers, and lots of other things, the way the luggage is distributed in the airport, the way where the planes are located in the different areas of the airport, has been optimized using optimization. When you are using electricity, the way electricity has been produced and transported has been involving optimization. When you take when you are buying stuff on the internet, the supply chain to distribute this has been designed by optimization. The production of those goods has been optimized optimization, etc., etc. And you see here examples taken from the Edelman finalist in Forms. Informs is organization of operation research, and there is a prize called Edelman where different teams can show what they have done using optimization, and they show also the return on investment resulting from their project. And so this is examples of finalists which have all been using Cplex as the engine to solve that, and you see it's on very different industries, but you also see that many times the measurable return on investment are very big numbers, and we get very good results with optimization from a business perspective. So that concludes my introduction of optimization. So at this point, you might have the impression from all the previous slides that I have presented optimization as a competitor to machine learning, trying to show that optimization has to be used in place of machine learning. Then you could be questioning why we have decided to include optimization in a platform like Cloud Pak for Data in addition to machine learning. So this is not my position. What I have explained should be summarized as optimization is a great set of techniques which is very often the most effective for prescriptive analytics problems where complex resource constraint problems are to be solved with an important number of decisions which are related one with the others. But machine learning is still the reference, the best techniques for predictive analytics, and in some cases for some types of prescriptive analytics. So it's a absolutely required element of the complete artificial intelligence process. So this will be even more visible in this section where I will introduce when machine learning and optimization can combine together. And machine learning and DO are a typical example of 1 + 1 = 3, as we will see in the example that combining the two, we go beyond what we could do with either one or the other technique. To show this, we will use the example of a bank that can run different marketing campaigns to promote additional products to existing customers. Depending on the customer characteristics, the success and the revenue to be expected of executing a particular campaign may change. Depending on the campaign, different costs and limits may also apply. And the decisions to be made are which product should be marketed to which customer. Note that we look at this example from the marketing campaign angle, but this same example can be reversed to a customer churn problem about marketing actions to customer to avoid those customer to live. I will use this very, very simple dataset, and you will see that it's very small, but it's already big enough to show the value of combined machine learning and optimization. In that case, we have 10 customers and we have 3 products. Based on the customer characteristics and the historical data, we have trained a machine learning model to predict the expected revenue when proposing a given product to a customer. And we have scored this model for these 10 new customers, and we have obtained an expected revenue for each product and each customer in this data set. In most cases, some people would consider that the problem is solved, but it's not the case, because the question is, now, what should you do in this particular situation? So of course, if all decisions are independent, if they are not constrained one with the other, there is no resource limit over a campaign, or in total there is no limit about for a given individual customer on what you can do, then indeed the bank might want to run all marketing actions to all customers where the expected revenue is positive. So in that case, to everyone. This is very simple. In that case, where there is no constraint between these 30 decisions, whether or not binary, to run a campaign for a customer, it's pretty easy, because as the decisions are not constrained, they are not related one with the others, then it's pretty easy. But in practice, two things in real life, two things are different. First, this expected revenue are supposing there is no correlation. Of course, we say we would get $70 to run a campaign for product A to customer 1 and 60 for product B to customer 1. But I would bet that if we run both campaigns, then of course the 70 and 60 would not be the same. There would be a correlation between proposing the two products. So the problem would be more complex. It's a first relation, first kind of constraints between those different decisions. Another type of constraints are the business constraints. There are things you don't want to decide. For example, we could imagine a lot of complex constraints, so we'll talk a bit later about a real case corresponding to this problem, but even in this simple case, we may imagine very simple constraints, such as we want to avoid customer burnout, so we don't want to send several proposals to the same customer, which in practice can be, we could decide to have a constraint such as no more than one campaign for each customer. So it means that you will have to choose only one row, one column for each row. And we may have a budget, for example, or maybe the department in charge of running the campaign has some limitations, some constraint. The world is not infinite. So you have limitation always, and in that case, we may imagine that for a given campaign, so for each column, you may choose at most 3 customers to run that. So you understand, one customer will have no proposal for sure. And so the problem is now, it still looks pretty simple. You need to choose at most 1 cell in each row, and at most 3 cells in each of the 3 columns. Again, it looks like an obvious problem. It may look very easy to do, but in practice, you can try to find the solution, and maybe you will not find it. Probably you will not find it. So maybe you stop this video to take some time. Here is the solution. Here is the optimal solution. It's 770. And you may take some time to find it, or you may not even take time. Because if you use heuristics, you would probably have chosen to propose product C to customer 6, because this is the highest expected revenue, 150. But for some reason, if you do that, then as a consequence of the constraints, you will end by taking a bad solution. So you would have to backtrack, just as you do in a Sudoku. When you are wrong, you come back. And so you have to explore part of the search tree and so on. This is more or less what optimization is doing under the hood. Obviously, there are more complex things that are involved in this process. But in that case, with 3 customers, 3 products, 10 customers, optimization would find a solution in microseconds. and you find solution probably in minutes if you find it. The real problem is, of course, much bigger. We have implemented similar solution for a real worldwide retail bank with not 10 but 7 million customers, with not 3 products but several dozens of products. So of course you imagine it's not something you can do manually. It's something you really require some process. And in that case, maybe the difference between the solution you can find with a heuristic and the solution you can find with optimization will not be $10, but maybe millions of dollars. So the schema we had in this particular case, marketing campaign or customer churn, which is similar, is very common. It's a common pattern in what I would call a complete AI supported solution, where machine learning and optimization can be used together, combined, so that we have an overall better solution. The schema is that machine learning will predict or will at least extract some information that is not directly available in the input. And this predicted data will be provided in addition to the known data as an input to the optimization model. So this, it can be prediction, it can be expected revenue, it can be a forecast of demand for the future, it can be a classification. There are lots of different cases, but machine learning will be there to extract some information that is not directly available in the input and provided in addition to data that is obvious, such as, for example, how much you can produce or what are the different resources available to produce something. And those two types of data together, in addition with the constraints, the objective, and the decision variables, the unknown where we ask optimization to prescribe some value for, are put into together, and the optimization engine will provide a set of optimal decisions. So you see, as a conclusion, what is important is that there is no competition here. It's really important to have all techniques available in a common platform so that you can use them together when required and combine them in order to have the best solution for your particular problem. A very last comment about combining machine learning and decision optimization. I would like to recommend the Thinking Fast and Slow bestseller, which is talking about the way humans are thinking, and that is showing that humans have two ways of thinking, fast and slow. And if you carefully read this book, you may find some analogy between those fast thinking and slow thinking. While fast thinking is using long-term experiences to very quickly propose some decisions, the slow thinking is here to analyze and check all the alternatives which have been proposed by the fast thinking and provide some more advanced outcome. And the conclusion of this book is that efficient humans are those who better combine the two ways of thinking. And the conclusion of this section is basically equivalent. I do think that most advanced AI applications are those who will most efficiently combine the different techniques, and in particular machine learning and decision optimization. Let's come now to this third and last section, which is about the software, product, and portfolio aspect. This presentation is not intended to be a deep dive into the technical functionalities, the products which are included in the decision optimization integration in Cloud Pak for Data, but I did not want to miss this opportunity to introduce what can be done with DO in Cloud Pak for Data. So we will have a very short introduction to show what is Cloud Pak for Data, what tools are provided in Cloud Pak for Data to support the development, deployment, and usage of DO models, and what tools are provided to integrate decision optimization and machine learning in Cloud Pak for Data. So first, a very high-level introduction of what is Cloud Pak for Data. So IBM has organized product in a set of cloud packs. There are different cloud packs for applications, cloud packs for automation, and cloud pack for data, among many others. Cloud pack for data is including whatever can be required to implement applications, in particular around the use of data and AI. Some important characteristic of those cloud packs is that they are multi-cloud and they are hybrid, on-prem and as a service. You can use you can use it on a managed. There is a managed instance of Cloud Pak for Data that you can very quickly start to use. You go on the web, you have an IBM ID. In a few minutes, you start creating models, machine learning, optimization, deploy, execute, etc., etc. But you also have on-prem version of those. You can install Cloud Pak for Data on OpenShift in any of the cloud, in IBM Cloud or any of the other clouds which are shown here in the bottom. Cloud Pak for Data is built around 4 areas, which are the 4 boxes here. I will not talk much about Watson Knowledge Catalog and Watson Studio Trust, previously known as Watson OpenScale, because there is nothing really specific to optimization in those 2 areas. Of course, whatever you do about discovering the data, preparing the data in Watson Knowledge Catalog can be used for any type of model you can build and run, optimization or machine learning or any others. Same thing for Watson Studio Trust. Where we really do have added some functionality in the data science platform is in Watson Studio and Watson Studio Deploy. Those 2 areas are where we have introduced optimization functionality. In Watson Studio, you build model. So for machine learning, you can train machine learning model. For optimization, you can formulate optimization model. But for optimization, you can also debug, validate, tune those models until you are ready, until the, as I mentioned before, the business expert, the business analyst is agreeing that the model is corresponding to the business need and it can be deployed so that it can be integrated into the production application. Deploying and integrating are what is supported by this 3rd pillar, Watson Studio Deploy, previously known as Watson Machine Learning. This is where you can deploy all types of models, machine learning and optimization, so that they will be really easy to integrate and work together. And so it's a scalable environment, and it will support the deployment and the integration of this model into very different production applications. So I will quickly come on those 3 levels and go into a bit more details on those 2 pillars. So to introduce the functionality that has been added for optimization to those 2 pillars, I will use those 3 important steps which are common where you are working with optimization. You first develop optimization model, you then deploy those models, and then you integrate those models so that they can be consumed inside a production application. We probably, from a theoretical perspective, in the first part, describe what are the important characteristics of each of those. In the development phase, you need to formulate the model, but you also need to debug it, tune it, and validate that the model is correct with the business analyst. All this will be done in the build area, Watson Studio of Cloud Pak for Data. When the model is ready, you will deploy this model, so you will move to the Watson Studio deploy area, and you will be able to configure the way the model is deployed so that you get a service that can be used to run this model with new data from any application, which is yet what you will do in the 3rd step. You will consume those optimization models because you will integrate the service into production application, and you will be able to solve this problem with any production data and get some outcomes from this to show to the business user. So let's see for those 3 steps what are the important features integrated in DO for Cloud Pak for Data. So first part, in Cloud Pak for Data, you will be able in Watson Studio to build your optimization model. And many different functionalities are available for you to do that. You will be able to create your model in Python or in OPL. I mentioned those 2 ways to formulate model when I gave the example for the zoo bus kids example. You can create those models into a notebook, which would be probably the most common way for people coming from the data science world. But we have also introduced decision optimization experiments, which will guide you through the process of creating those models. It will provide some advanced functionality such as the support for multiple scenarios and some visualizations. This will be very useful to ensure the model correctly corresponds to the business needs, so for the validation and the debugging step before the models are deployed. Also, in the experiment, we have introduced a modeling assistant which allows you for some type of models, for some particular domains of application, to create a simple model based on your data and connecting the concept in your data to the concept in the particular domain. And through natural language, as you see on the screenshot in the bottom right, you will be able to build simple models, but which still are compatible with all the other functionality of Cloud Pak for Data, so that you will be able to deploy them and integrate them into application as any other model directly created in Python or in OPL. When your model is ready, when it has been validated by a business analyst, you will be able to deploy it. So now in the Watson Studio deploy section, previously known as Watson Machine Learning, and this environment will allow you, will provide you certain functionality which are pretty useful for managing this deployed model. First, it's a scalable environment. You have different t-shirt size which correspond to different configurations of CPUs and memories. As we have mentioned also this before, for optimization, you may require significant computation capacity during production. So those t-shirt sizes are here so that you can select the type of environment that will correspond to the complexity of this particular model. We also offer parallel execution and queues which are required so that you can submit from the production application. For the business user may want to submit different executions. The same model will be run with different data, for example, to do what-if analysis. And there is a queuing mechanism which will put some of those jobs in a queue waiting so that some others are executed. You can execute several in parallel, and this is configurable. You have different ways to do the deployment and then to do the integration in Python, but we also have REST APIs, which allows you to do the deployment from most any place that you can imagine. There is a user interface so that you can do all these steps to configure the way you want to deploy the t-shirt size and create these deployments from a user interface with a few clicks, and if you don't want to use an API. Last step, after the deployments have been created, you will want to integrate those deployed models from your existing or from your new applications. So you can do that in absolutely any applications using REST API. Again, not here to deploy the model, but to call those deployed model, providing some data and accessing the solution after the model has been solved. But we also provide some integration into some known framework, which are Decision Optimization Center, which is dedicated to optimization. This is the one you can see on the top right. We also offer an integration into planning analytics, you see on the bottom right, and we have an integration on Palantir for Cloud Pak for Data, so that those three different platforms for business users can be used to run the models which have been deployed and which are running in Cloud Pak for Data. This slide summarizes the functionality. In fact, it does not include everything, but at the same time, it looks pretty complex. It looks pretty complex because what it intends to show is that there are plenty of ways to do what you have to do. It follows again the three levels: build the model, deploy the model, and integrate and run this model from your business application. At each level, in each row, we have different boxes, three different ways each time. In fact, there are more which are available, but there are alternatives. So if we take the example of build, you see that some users of Cloud Pak for Data, some OR experts, some data scientists may prefer to formulate their models using a notebook because they come from the Python world, they are used to notebooks, and some others, for example, may prefer OPL as a way to formulate because they come from the older optimization world, and they are used to this language. Both are available, and much more are available, and it does not prevent you from using all the functionality at the other level. You may even imagine an application where not only machine learning models are created and combined with optimization, but different optimization models are combined. Some are in Python, some are in OPL, some have been created with notebooks, some have been created with, for example, the modeling assistant. At the deploy and at the consume and trust, at the integration level, same thing, there are alternatives. You can do things from Python, from REST API, from user interface, in different environments, etc. So Cloudpak for Data is really a flexible platform where people can collaborate on using different techniques, machine learning, optimization, and others, but also different tools for each of those techniques, and everything will combine together so that you have at the end all the models available to support your application. So we are getting to the end. This is my concluding slide, and I just wanted to provide some important points which I feel are important to remember. First, in the first section, I've tried to introduce what's optimization to people who are potentially more familiar with other data science techniques such as machine learning. So I have explained that optimization is nothing more than yet another particular data science techniques such as machine learning. Machine learning is not equal to AI, DO is not equal to AI. These are two different techniques which are both part of AI. Second point, optimization is particularly useful, efficient for prescriptive analytics, and in particular where you want to prescribe many decisions, and those decisions are constrained one with the others. If you have to take many decisions, but there is absolutely no constraint between those decisions, these are in fact lots of small independent problems, then maybe optimization is not required. But on the other hand, when you have many decisions, there are constraints one with the others. Most of the time, optimization would be a good choice for this type of problem. And we all know that in our world, we are discovering it more and more. Everything is constrained. The planet is not infinite. The resources are not infinite. So we have to care about the resources because their cost is more and more relevant for our decisions. And so those decisions are in general constrained one with the others. Then we talked about a few particular aspects of how optimization is used. We described the fact that the development process is different. With optimization, there is nothing like automatic training. On the other hand, you don't need as much data to start creating an optimization model, but you need some understanding, some knowledge of the constraints, the objectives, and the decisions that have to be taken. And you need that in order to create a formulation of a mathematical model for this particular problem. And this is different, and this is many times appearing as the bottleneck to start using optimization. Maybe the very simple example I have used makes you understand that in most cases, maybe creating this optimization model may not be so complex, and this is why we are trying to invite anyone to start using optimization. We also talked about the difference when using optimization models in production after they have been deployed. An important point is that solving an optimization model with production data can be very long. It's not something that happens in microseconds, it's something that happens in minutes or in hours. So in general, well, most times, this needs to be managed asynchronously. You manage jobs so that you start the optimization and you monitor whether the optimization is finished, and when it's finished, you get access to the solutions. The last comment in this first section, coming from this first section, introducing optimization, is that with optimization, solutions can be shown to be optimal and they can be explained. So you may not always want to have the optimal solution. Maybe after a few minutes you have a solution you know that is less than 1% away from the optimal one, and maybe you want to stop here and don't want to wait one more hour to close this 1% gap. So, but at each moment, you may have some information on the gap, and it's something that is mathematically demonstrated. Also, solutions can be explained. I discussed that before. You don't. It's really useful to trust the solution provided by optimization. You can explain why your solution is preferred to any other solution by providing the constraint that would be violated by the other solution, or the objective which would be not as good as the one with the optimal solution. So all this is coming from the first section about introducing optimization. Then it's also a very important point of this presentation is that optimization combined perfectly with machine learning. In fact, most of the time, optimization requires machine learning because optimization in general is applied to the decisions you want to execute tomorrow, next month, next year. So part of the data is known perfectly and some part of the data is not exactly known. So you need some forecast and so you need some prediction, and then in general you need some kind of machine learning. But as I said before, machine learning is not always used in combination with optimization for forecasting. There are plenty of other ways to use machine learning in combination with optimization, and most times, always I would say, combination is better than any of those techniques used alone. Finally, in my last section, I introduced quickly functionalities which are available to support decision optimization for developing the model, for deploying the model, and for consuming the model, which are integrated in Cloudpak for Data. There are much more details about this functionality and much more detail about optimization in several of my posts on Medium, which I invite you to have a look at. And said that, I really thank you for listening to this presentation.